Gareth's hands were shaking so violently that I actually thought he might drop the phone right onto the kitchen tiles. It wasn't his phone, it was Trina's, my mother's, and it was unlocked. He was scrolling through a thread that seemed to go on forever, his thumb jerking over messages that I could see even from where I stood. There were endless rows of red heart emojis, voice notes that lasted minutes, and texts that said, "I love you," sent to a man named Vance, someone neither of us had ever heard of. The kitchen was dead silent except for the humming of the refrigerator, which made Gareth's whisper sound like a scream. "Kaylin, tell me this isn't real," he rasped, looking up at me with eyes that were already rimmed in red. I didn't know how to answer him. I just looked at Trina. She was standing by the sink, a dish towel in her hand, her face draining of all color until she looked like a statue. When she finally spoke, she didn't apologize. She snapped, "Stop overreacting, Gareth. It's nothing." That denial didn't help. It just made the air in the room feel heavy, thick with a betrayal that was suddenly loud enough to deafen us all. Before I continue, if you're watching this, please hit the like button. Every like helps push these true stories to more people who need to hear them. And if you enjoy real-life revenge stories, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next update. Also, I'd love it if you comment your state or country below. I love seeing how far these stories travel around the world. I grabbed Gareth by the arm and pulled him into the living room, trying to put some physical distance between him and Trina. My stomach felt like someone had tied it into a tight, cold knot. He wasn't listening to me, though. He was staring at the screen, tapping frantically now. "She blocked us both, Kaylin," he said, his voice trembling with a mix of confusion and rising panic. "Why would she block both of us on Instagram if this was nothing?" I looked at him, trying to find a logical explanation, but my mind came up empty. There is no innocent reason to block your husband and your daughter unless you are hiding a life you don't want them to see. I looked back toward the kitchen. Trina hadn't followed us. She was still standing there, gripping the counter, aggressively avoiding looking in our direction. That body language told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't just some flirty messages or a misunderstanding. This was deep. The way she wouldn't meet our eyes felt like an admission of guilt that she was too cowardly to speak out loud. The house felt different now, unsafe, as if the foundation had cracked while we were standing on it. Gareth sat on the edge of the sofa and showed me what he had found. It wasn't just messages. It was a completely hidden account, a Finsta, that she had kept secret for months. My chest tightened as I scrolled through it. The profile was full of videos, revealing ones, the kind where she was posing in ways I had never seen her pose before. And the followers weren't her friends or family. They were strange men, hundreds of them, all leaving comments that made my skin crawl. It felt like looking at a stranger's life, not my mother's. Trina finally walked into the room, wiping her hands, trying to force a smile. She tried to laugh it off, saying the account was just for fun and that she liked the attention. "It's harmless," she said, waving a hand dismissively. But Gareth wasn't buying it. His voice cracked, high and broken, as he held the phone up. "If it's for fun, why did you add my friends on here but block me?" The silence she gave back was deafening. She didn't have a lie ready for that one. It hung in the air, heavy and suffocating, feeling like a confession on its own. The tension in the living room snapped. Gareth stood up, his face flushed, and the accusations started pouring out of him. He accused her of meeting someone, of sneaking around during those late nights she claimed she was at the gym or grocery shopping. "You're seeing him, aren't you?" he shouted, pointing at the name Vance on the screen. I stepped between them, hands up, trying to play the mediator, trying to keep the roof from blowing off our house. "Let's just talk calmly," I pleaded, though I felt anything but calm. Trina immediately went on the defensive. She crossed her arms, rolling her eyes, insisting he was paranoid and crazy. "You're imagining things, Gareth," she said. But the panic in her voice was sharp and sounded too rehearsed. It was like she was reading from a bad script. She wasn't looking at him when she said it. She was looking at the floor, at the wall, anywhere but his face. Every lie she spit out just made Gareth's face fall deeper into disbelief. He wasn't angry anymore. He looked horrified, watching the woman he had been married to for 20 years
lie to his face without blinking. That night, the house was quiet in the worst way possible. I found Gareth sitting at the kitchen table in the dark, staring at a glass of water he hadn't touched. He looked up when I walked in, his shadows face and exhausted. "She's been different these past few months, Kaylin," he whispered. "New clothes, new perfume, guarding her phone. She's hiding something bigger than an Instagram account." I pulled out a chair and sat opposite him, my hands clasping together on the cold wood table. "Don't think the worst, Dad," I said, trying to convince myself as much as him. Maybe it really was just for attention. She wouldn't actually do that. I insisted she wasn't capable of destroying our family like that. I wanted to believe it. I wanted to believe my mother was still the person I thought she was. But when Gareth looked at me, his eyes were dull and resigned. They told me he already knew the truth he didn't want to face. He wasn't asking me. He was grieving. He knew deep down that the texts were just the tip of the iceberg, and we were about to crash into the rest of it. I knew I couldn't let this destroy Gareth. He was too fragile right now, and Trina was too defensive to be honest with him. I needed to protect them both, somehow. So I came up with a plan to get Trina to open up, but it required me to be deceptive. I waited until Gareth went to bed, then I found Trina in the sunroom, pacing. I kept my voice low and soft. I acted like I was on her side. "Mom," I said gently, "Dad is going crazy. If you just tell me the truth, maybe I can help you fix this before he does something rash." I told her that I could help her smooth things over if she just told me what Gareth already suspected. It was a lie, but it was a necessary one. She stopped pacing and turned to look at me. Her eyes narrowed, studying my face, searching for any sign of judgment. She was torn. I could see the battle between her fear of being exposed and her relief at having a potential ally. She took a breath, shoulders dropping slightly, and I knew I had found a crack in her armor. Slowly, the dynamic in the room shifted. She sat down on the wicker chair, pulling her legs up like a teenager. Her trust was moving toward me, just as I had hoped. She leaned in, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "What exactly did he see?" she asked. "Did he read all of them?" She wasn't worried about how much she had hurt him. She was worried about exactly how much evidence he had. That realization made a sour taste rise in my throat, but I kept my face neutral. "He saw a lot, Mom," I said, keeping it vague. "He thinks you met up with this guy." I watched her reaction closely. She didn't immediately deny it. Instead, she bit her lip, looking anxious. She began asking more questions about Dad's state of mind, wanting to know how much trouble she was truly in. She was calculating her survival, not her apology. Each question she asked made my heart beat louder in my ears, thumping against my ribs. I was terrified of what she was going to say, but I knew I had to keep pushing until I got the whole ugly truth. The silence stretched out for what felt like 10 minutes, though it was probably only seconds. Trina looked at the sliding glass door, seeing her own reflection in the night. Then, without warning, she broke. The fight just left her body. "Fine," she whispered, her voice trembling in a way that sounded almost childish. "I'll tell you." I braced myself against the doorframe. I thought I was ready. I thought I had prepared myself for a confession about a coffee date or a flirtatious, emotional affair. I wasn't ready for what she was about to admit. I wasn't ready for the reality of who my mother had become when we weren't looking. The air in the sunroom felt suffocatingly hot all of a sudden. "Just tell me," I urged, my voice steady despite the shaking in my hands. She looked up at me, eyes wet but surprisingly clear. It was the look of someone who wanted to unburden themselves, regardless of who got crushed by the weight of it. She took a deep breath, and I knew that whatever she said next was going to change our family forever. There was no going back after this moment. She started talking, and the words tumbled out fast. She told me about Vance. He wasn't some random stranger from the internet. He was a shop worker she had met at a boutique near our neighborhood. My stomach dropped. I knew the place. We bought groceries right next door. She described how they had started talking about clothes, then life, then her unhappiness. It sounded so mundane until she got to the part about the trial room. She told me how he had followed her in there one afternoon to check a fit. He kissed me, she said, staring at her hands, and I didn't push him away. My body went cold, absolute zero, like the world had stopped moving on its axis. I could picture the shop. I could picture her there. I could picture Gareth at work busting his back to pay for the clothes she was trying on while she was betraying him in a dressing room. I felt sick. It was so cheap, so gritty. I wanted to tell her to stop, to shut up, but I needed to know the extent of it. I needed to know if this was a one-time mistake or a lifestyle.
I was praying that was the end of it. A kiss. A mistake. Something we could maybe eventually forgive. But then she looked me right in the eyes and said the words that shattered whatever innocence I had left. We didn't stop, Kaylin. We did it again. We planned it. It felt like the floor dropped out from under me. I had to grab the back of the chair to stay standing. It wasn't a lapse in judgment. It was an affair, a calculated, orchestrated affair. She talked about coordinating schedules, checking when Gareth would be at the office, meeting Vance in his car or back at the shop. They had a system. That was the part that hurt the most. The logistics of it. It meant that every time she smiled at us over dinner, every time she asked Dad how his day was, she was running a separate timeline in her head. She was living a double life. The betrayal wasn't just physical. It was the premeditation. It was the fact that she had opportunities to stop, to turn around, to think about us, and she chose not to. Every single time she chose him. My vision actually blurred. I felt a wave of nausea roll over me so strong I thought I might throw up right there on the rug. Trina watched me crumble, watching the color leave my face, and she still tried to rationalize it. It was a mistake, she pleaded, reaching out a hand I refused to take. I couldn't help it. I was lonely. The excuses sounded pathetic. Lonely? Dad was home every night. He doted on her. He loved her. I couldn't stand to look at her. The woman sitting there wasn't my mother. She was a stranger who had set a bomb off in our lives and was now complaining about the noise. I need to go, I choked out. I barely made it out of the room before the panic consumed me. I felt like the walls were closing in. I ran to the front door, fumbling with the lock, needing fresh air, needing to get away from the toxicity that was leaking out of her pores. I couldn't breathe in there. I couldn't breathe the same air as her. Outside, the night air was cool, but I was sweating. I sat on the front steps, gasping for air, trying not to collapse into a full-blown panic attack. I needed an adult. I needed someone wise. I pulled out my phone and called Loretta, my grandmother, Trina's mom. I thought she would be the moral compass. I thought she would be furious. I spilled everything to her, crying into the phone, telling her about Vance, the shop, the planning, everything. Instead of outrage, there was a long pause. Then Loretta said in a calm, icy voice, "You need to hide this, Kaylin. You need to save the marriage." I froze. What? I asked, thinking I heard her wrong. "Don't tell your father the details," she commanded. "It will destroy him. Just help your mother bury it." It was like a slap in the face. My pain didn't matter. The truth didn't matter. Only the appearance of a happy family mattered to her. I hung up the phone, feeling more alone than I ever had in my life. The rot went deeper than just mom. It was generational. I stayed outside for another hour, pulling myself together, building a mask. I had to return home pretending to be composed. I couldn't let Gareth see me falling apart, or he would know how bad it was. I walked back inside and forced myself to sit through dinner. It was grotesque.
Trina acted as if nothing had happened, moving dishes around, asking if the chicken was dry. It fueled a shaking anger inside me that I had to physically suppress by gripping my fork until my knuckles turned white. Gareth picked at his food, barely eating. He looked between me and Trina, sensing the weird energy, sensing that I knew something new. He noticed something was wrong, my red eyes, the way I wouldn't pass the salt, but he didn't push. He was too tired to fight at the table. He just ate in silence, looking like a man walking to the gallows. I wanted to scream at Trina. I wanted to flip the table, but I sat there, swallowing my rage along with the food, playing the part of the good daughter while my family disintegrated. Later that evening, Gareth asked if I wanted to walk the dog with him. We walked in silence for the first few blocks, the leash clicking quietly. Under a street lamp, he stopped and turned to me. "What do you think she did, Kaylin?" he asked. His voice was so vulnerable. "Do you think she crossed the line?" I looked at his hopeful face, the face of a man who desperately wanted to be told his wife was faithful. I lied. "I don't think so, Dad," I said. "I think it was just emotional." I tried to sell it, but he just stared at me. Then he shook his head, slowly. "She met him," he said quietly, "in a dressing room or a car. It wasn't just talking." I stopped breathing. He guessed everything anyway, almost word for word. He described scenarios that were terrifyingly close to what Trina had confessed to me hours earlier. He didn't need me to tell him. His gut instinct was screaming the truth at him, and no amount of protecting him was going to deafen that noise. It stunned me how accurate he was. He spoke with a terrifying precision, as if he'd been preparing himself for this truth for months, running the simulations in his head late at night while she was sleeping. His voice wasn't angry. It was quiet, almost defeated. "I know her," he said softly. "I know when she's lying, and I know she hasn't been mine for a long time." I realized then that he already knew. He was just hoping he was wrong. He was asking me for permission to believe the lie, but his heart had already accepted the brutal reality. Watching him stand there, a good man broken by a selfish act, broke me too. I wanted to tell him right then. I wanted to confirm it and let him grieve, but I couldn't. Not yet. I needed proof. I needed something undeniable so that Trina couldn't gaslight him later. I needed to be smarter than her. When we got back home, Gareth went upstairs to shower. I went to find Mom again. I found her in the kitchen, scrolling on her phone again, as if the crisis had passed. I confronted her, keeping my voice low. "I need you to clarify some details," I said, pretending I was confused, "so I can help Dad understand." I told her I needed the timeline straight so we didn't get caught in a lie. I was playing her. I was manipulating the manipulator. She sighed, put the phone down, and started repeating everything all over again. The meeting, the kiss, the planning. She got comfortable. She thought we were co-conspirators now. She didn't notice that my hand was in my hoodie pocket or that my thumb was resting on the screen of my phone. This time, I pressed record. I wasn't going to let this be a case of he said, she said. I was getting the receipt. Hearing her calmly describe how she cheated in a dressing room while Dad was at work, busting his ass to support us, made my chest burn with a physical heat. She spoke like it was a drama she'd watched on Netflix, detached and clinical. It just happened. The adrenaline was crazy. She was talking about adrenaline. Dad was talking about our family being destroyed. The contrast was sickening. The recording app was running silently, catching every word, every sigh, every excuse. It felt like evidence of a crime. In a way, it was. She was murdering their marriage, and I was holding the smoking gun. It took every ounce of self-control I had not to scream at her, not to call her a monster. I just nodded, asking prompting questions. And then what? Where was Dad? I made her say it all. I wanted there to be zero ambiguity when the time came to use it. As soon as I left the room, I went to my bedroom and locked the door. I saved the audio file. Then I emailed it to myself. Then I uploaded it to a hidden cloud drive. I saved the audio in multiple places, knowing it might protect Dad later if the situation exploded, or if she tried to claim he was abusive or lying. In divorces, people get nasty. Truth gets twisted. I wasn't going to let that happen to Gareth. Mom still didn't realize she'd confessed to the wrong person. She thought she had bought my silence with her honesty. She thought she had turned me against Dad, or at least neutralized me. She was wrong. My loyalty had silently, violently shifted. I was no longer her daughter in this moment. I was Gareth's witness. I lay on my bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of the digital file on my phone. It was a grenade, and I was just waiting for the right moment to pull the pin.
Gareth avoided Mom for the entire next day. He claimed he had a headache and stayed in the guest room, or he went out to the balcony. I watched him sit alone out there, staring at nothing, watching the cars pass by on the street below. He looked smaller, older. He needed space to breathe, to process the betrayal without looking at the face of the betrayer. I knew I had to help him take control before Mom or Grandma twisted the story. Loretta was probably already planning a narrative where Dad was the villain, or where the affair was his fault for working too much. I couldn't let them rewrite history. Gareth was paralyzed by grief, so I had to be the one to move the chess pieces. I watched him through the window, my heart breaking, and decided that tonight was the night. He deserved the truth, the whole truth, in her own voice. My plan was simple. Make sure Dad had the truth while keeping the peace long enough to protect his health, and his father's, my grandpa, who was frail and couldn't handle a scandal. I waited until Mom went to take a bath. I walked out to the balcony and sat next to Gareth. "Dad," I said softly, "you need to know the truth. You were right." He looked at me, fear in his eyes. I pulled out my phone. "I don't want to tell you," I said. "I want you to hear it." I pressed play. I showed him the recording. His face went pale, a ghostly white, as Trina's voice filled the cool night air, detailing the affair. He didn't yell. He didn't throw the chair. He just sat there, frozen, listening to his wife describe her infidelity with a calmness that cut deeper than any scream could have. Instead, he cried silently. It was the most painful thing I have ever watched. His shoulders shook and tears streamed down his face without him making a sound. It was like watching decades of sacrifice. The overtime shifts, the family vacations, the anniversaries be reduced to dust in real time. He looked down at his hands, the hands that built this life, and realized they were holding nothing. He took a deep, shuddering breath. "I'm not ready to decide anything yet," he whispered, wiping his face. I can't blow it all up today." I nodded, holding his hand. But even though he said he wasn't ready, I saw something settle inside him. The confusion was gone. The gaslighting didn't work anymore. A decision was forming quietly behind his eyes. He wasn't the confused husband anymore. He was a man who knew the score.
Over the next few days, Dad became meticulous. The crying stopped. He went into survival mode. He gathered documents, bank statements, the deed to the house, car titles. He organized finances and secured everything under his name or moved things to separate accounts where he could. He called a loyal friend just to ask hypotheticals. He was building a fortress. He didn't confront Mom yet. He didn't need her retaliation while he was vulnerable. He played it cool, civil but distant. Trina thought the storm was passing. She thought his distance was just him getting over it. She had no idea he was silently disentangling their lives piece by piece. I watched him, proud and sad. He was taking his power back, preparing for the war that was inevitable. He was ensuring that when he dropped the hammer, he wouldn't be the one getting crushed. When he finally confronted her, a week later, he did it calmly. It was Sunday morning. We were in the kitchen. He simply said, "I know everything, Trina. The dressing room, the planning, Vance." Mom tried to deny it, instinctively reverting to her "you're crazy" script. She started to raise her voice, to act offended. But Dad didn't argue. He just pulled out his phone and played the recording. My recording.
Trina's face collapsed. The color vanished. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She looked at me, realized what I had done, and the betrayal in her eyes was massive, but it was nothing compared to what she had done to us. She had nothing left to weaponize, no narrative to twist. The truth was on the table, ugly and undeniable, spoken in her own voice. She sank into a chair, defeated. Dad stood over her, not menacingly, just firmly. He told her he wasn't filing for divorce, not yet. He explained the terms. Their relationship was over emotionally. They were done. But for now, he would protect his parents from the humiliation. He would protect me from the chaos of a public split during my exams. And he would protect himself from her manipulation. "We are roommates," he said, his voice flat, "until I decide otherwise. You will stay in the guest room. You will not touch the finances, and you will not lie to me again." The power had shifted completely. Trina nodded, tears finally falling, realizing she had lost him. She had gambled her marriage for a thrill, and now she was living in the wreckage. Dad walked out of the room, head high, leaving her alone with her choices. In the weeks that followed, peace slowly returned to the house. Not between them, but inside me and Dad. The air wasn't heavy with secrets anymore. Dad started smiling again, focusing on his work, on me, on his future. Trina became a ghost in the house, quiet and polite, realizing too late what she had thrown away. I learned a hard lesson that year. Truth belongs to those who value it, not those who exploit it simply because they share your blood. I stood by the right person. I saved my dad from living a lie. If you've been through something like this, remember, truth may hurt. It may burn everything down, but it also sets you free to build something real. You survive it. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share your own stories in the comments. I read them all, and we are in this together.